What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about the hot topic for this week, which is the Nazis, and of course, Justin Trudeau and his blaming of his Nazi ovation, where the Canadian government had a Nazi soldier veteran getting a standing ovation from all of Canada, and that's being blamed on Russian propaganda. So we're going to be talking about is are Nazis bad, or perhaps maybe they're good. Maybe they're good now. We'll be talking about the West's rehabilitation of Nazis, and also awesome 90s games as well. That's really what I want to talk about. But unfortunately, we have whoa. Sorry, my mouse is losing its mind. Unfortunately, we have to deal with this other topic as well. But I just wanted to say I'm disappointed by 2020s, not just because we're living during COVID, climate, economic, and several other crises simultaneously, but also because I can't play Wolfenstein anymore. um, you know, let's just go through my little thread that I made here. Since we're already there. So basically the problem that I have is that I cannot play Wolfenstein 3D anymore because apparently it is Russian propaganda to fight Nazis. So that really disappoints me. If you don't know what Wolfenstein 3D is, Wolfenstein 3D is a 90s video game where you play a soldier during World War II who goes through castles in the Third Reich and blows away countless Nazi soldiers, Nazi privates, lieutenants. You fight Hitler. You fight cyborg Adolf Hitler at one point, and then you kill Hitler. And it's fun killing lots and lots and lots of really horrible, evil people. Who take joy in raping and murdering innocent people because they believe that the non-Aryan race, Ubermensch, are subhuman. So of course, killing Nazis is that was not controversial. It was just a thing that people did in World War II, and also they did it in video games such as Wolfenstein 3D, made by id Software. Made another one of my favorite games as well, Doom. You might have heard of Doom and John Romero. John Romero is actually working on Sigil right now. Just as a quick aside, I'm pretty sure I just saw him tweet that. So if you want to see the maker of Wolfenstein 3D working on the game, you can actually go and let me just double check that real fast. He's making another game right now on Twitch, but so I'm sure he's disappointed that people can't play his game anymore. Because why? Because, well, let's get into it. Trudeau is now blaming Russian propaganda for the Nazi ovation. Okay, so I think everybody has seen this, right? Everybody has seen this. The Canadian Parliament, as I said earlier, has had a 98-year-old veteran give a standing ovation to Yaroslav Hunka, who fought for the 14th Division of the Waffen SS. That's somebody you would have been shooting in Wolfenstein. Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to the outright Nazi collaborator. There's a picture, and Zelensky is there, with the head of Ukraine, along with Justin Trudeau. Interesting that Vladimir Zelensky is also happy to celebrate literal Nazis that massacred Jews. It's an interesting thing for a Jewish president of Ukraine, which has received hundreds of billions of dollars of Western weapons and aid. It's kind of weird that he would be doing that. But anyways, Um, yeah, this is a video here. This is a video here of the Nazi in the corner there saying Sig Heil. It's also known as Slava Ukraini is the equivalent of Sig Heil, by the way. Just in case, and I know most people don't know that in the West, but you know, so that's the Canadian Parliament celebrating a literal Nazi murderer, fascist. All of Parliament, by the way, every single one of them stood up for that Nazi. Every single one. By the way, this entire event was orchestrated, so everybody knew in advance who that person was. Like, in order to even get into Parliament, they had to bring this person in. They had to have vetted him. Everything was coordinated. Like, everybody knew their places. So that means all of Canadian Parliament is pro-fascist, right? It's like if a Nazi sits down at your table and has a swastika, and then 10 people like don't leave that table, then there's 11 Nazis at that table, right? If you are enabling Nazis in your space, you are on the side of the fascists, right? But if a Nazi sits down at your table and then 10 people at that table stand up and give like highly enthusiastic applause, that means not only are you a Nazi, you're like an enthusiastic Nazi. So what that actually, no, but it's actually very important. We're going to get into the history. Canada has always, and the US and Canada have been fully, like, completely bought in and on the side of fascists and Nazis this entire time. They've just been very good at hiding that. In fact, somebody brought up an interesting point that, I forget who it was. I think it was someone from the Duran, another YouTube channel, that was saying that the Nazis, Ukrainian Canadians, which are actually large sections of that, are fascists. Canada has the largest Ukrainian diaspora population. So the largest number of Ukrainians outside of Ukraine are in Canada, and most of them are fascists, including the Deputy Prime Minister, Trudeau Freeland's grandfather, literal Nazi. OUN is a Nazi publication that he worked with, or organization, and so all of Canada is 100% on the side of all the Parliament. Knew this, and they are 100% with the Nazis. So that's important for people to understand that that's what we're dealing with. I know it's like it's kind of sick and gross, but I mean that's why do we think Hawaiians don't want to be part of the United States and Canada, which is all part of the collective Western imperial world? So Justin Trudeau, since that point, right, has blamed Russian propaganda for the Nazi ovation. Poland wants that Nazi SS vet extradited. Right, this is the picture of the guy. Speaking of Anthony Rota, may have been invited Nazi collaborator Yaroslav Hunka. This is a picture of him in his Nazi uniform, by the way, to Parliament. But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not having much luck dodging blame. He's trying his best, but so after the end credits, the surviving Nazis in Wolfenstein. So again, just to give you, like, let's just get a little more Wolfenstein, let's get a little Wolfenstein 3D up in here. I gotta have a little more video games. It's not the most fun topic, but it's a first-person video game developed by id Software, published by Apogee and FormGen. Originally released in May 5th, 1992, it was inspired by 81 Muse Software game called Castle Wolfenstein, and it's the third installment of the Wolfenstein series. You play William B.J. Blazkowicz. He is a fictional character during World War II. He is a Polish. This is a picture of him in the later games. Right, he is a protagonist, a Polish Jewish person, and he fights the regular German army and frequently encounters bizarre Nazi experiments concerning biomechanical technology and occult. And he is he's known for his his crucial missions fighting Nazis. So that's the entire game, right? I guess this is the cover. Important to note, this was not controversial in the 90s either. You kill a final boss fighting Nazi soldiers, right? So his entire mission, his sole purpose is literally to kill Nazis. When you start Wolfenstein 3D, I'm just trying to, I'll adjust my volume here. When you start Wolfenstein 3D, you're literally you're thrown straight into shooting. It doesn't there's not really a lot of story prologue. There's no intro sequences because it should be obvious. It should be obvious, right, that when you're killing people who their entire ideology, who, and by the way, the SS, this guy, right, he actually volunteered. It was a voluntary military, so he volunteered to sign up with the Ukrainian fascists, who, they went specifically to kill and to rape based on the idea that there were lesser peoples than their great Aryan race, right? So it was killing for the joy of it. It was killing people for the joy of white supremacy, of Aryan supremacy, right? Of the Ukrainian blonde-haired, blue-eyed supremacy. So this is not like there's a lot of people saying that this Nazi soldier that Canada was celebrating was some kind of like he was forced to do it because he was just defending Ukraine. He was just this was a voluntary act that he took because he believes in the supremacy of particular genetics, particular genes based upon Banderite ideology. As the Banderite is the ideology of Stepan Bandera, who was the Ukrainian far right leader. Right. He was the radical militant wing of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationals. And he was, the proclamation pledged the cooperation of the new Ukrainian state with Nazi Germany under the leadership of Hitler. Bandera sent a letter to Hitler arguing for the case for an independent Ukraine. And, so he was directly connected and directly worked with, he also Stepan Bandera was famous for saying that the he slaughtered many innocent people to cleanse Ukraine of Russian, Jew, Romani, and other gay people, and anybody who wasn't of the pure Aryan white race. And when he was asked, like, in court, like, how could you do this, and he said, I would kill 1 million innocent people for the glory of Ukraine. He said that. Like, he said, I will kill everyone that I have to kill in order to purify Ukraine for the supreme, genetically superior white race. That's his ideology, right? So it's basically he's just full dyed in the wool fascist Nazi, right? And so this person, right, that Canada brought was a volunteer who went to join the Stepan Bandera teams to exterminate people based upon their impure genetics, their impure orientation, their impure ethnic background, their religion. And so that was who the Canadians were celebrating. Every single Canadian Parliament member, every single one, Liberal, Conservative, NDP, all, left, right, center, all of it, standing Nazi ovation. And so, obviously this is not, it's funny, but it's also it's it's hard to, it's a gallows humor, obviously, but this is obviously very serious. How could this? Many people may ask, right? How is this possible, right? How could Nazis suddenly be good though? Right? Because if Canada is a good country, like if Canada is the free, liberal, a just, democratic country with freedom of religion and freedom of LGBTQ plus rights and racial equality, and like we're supposed to believe this, right? This is what Canada says about itself, right? If you go to Canada, right, is Canada a free country, right? Right. Canada is a strong history of respect for political rights and civil rights. You know, and you know, Canada has loves Indigenous people. Canada has racial equality and religious equality, right? Why would you be celebrating a Nazi, right? Why would you be celebrating a Nazi in your parliament though, right? Why would you all be applauding for somebody who exterminated people based upon their racial background, based upon their religion, based upon their, you know, nation of origin, right? Why doesn't make any sense, right? Doesn't make it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense, right? And that's why I kind of was like, Nazis are good. So wait, Nazi. So either Canada is a country that believes in extermination of people based upon, right? Like either you know, Canada believes like Stepan Bandera, right, on the in the extermination of people based upon their ethnic backgrounds, right? Like many Ukrainians, including the Azov Battalion, unfortunately, and the Banderites that are currently are in power in Ukraine. When you see that symbol, by the way, the symbol that many liberals have, the Jewish liberals have the symbol. You might notice of one of many symbols. This is Stepan Bandera's symbol, right? This is like a swastika, right? So either Canada believes in extermination of people, and all of Canadian Parliament believes in extermination of people based upon their ethnic background, race, religion, and the supremacy of the white Aryan race, or it doesn't, and somehow Russians trick Canada into having the Nazi come, but this doesn't make any sense, right? Like because right, in order the Canadian, this is what we're saying is that all of the Canadian government, I mean, every single one, right? What you're saying is that you know, the Canada Parliament, I lost that video. What you're saying is that every single one of this Canadian Parliament is brainwashed by Russia. Because every single one of them have to know who this guy is, right? Every single is there a Russian botnet farm coming through all of these boomers and Gen X Facebook and all the Canadian Parliament, Millennial and Gen Z TikTok? Is Russia hacking into TikTok to brainwash all of Canada into, like, I don't understand how that works, right? How does all the hundreds or dozens and you know, these mass of Canadian government officials, how are they all propagandized to stand for a Nazi? Do you see how, like, this, none of this adds up, right? You know, we'll figure out how it adds up at some point possibly, but it doesn't add up. How? Because this is what Trudeau, right? So Trudeau, right? Let's see what he actually said, right? So Justin Trudeau blames Russian propaganda for Nazi ovation, dodging blame for the embarrassing incident that saw himself, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and every member of the parliament give a standing ovation for a veteran of Hitler's SS. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Monday it's important to push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation. But simply pointing the finger at Moscow isn't cutting it this time. Przemysław Czarnek, the education minister of Poland, says he's taking steps to extradite Canadian Yaroslav Hunka to answer for his role in the infamous Waffen-SS Galicia division that committed mass murders in Poland and other European countries during World War II. So that's why I brought up Wolfenstein, right? Because literally, I mean, if BJ Blazkowicz, right, of Wolfenstein had his way, he would just blow that Nazi away, right? Right? Like if the protagonist of Wolfenstein, right, was led into Canadian Parliament, he would have just blown that Nazi's brain out with a Sig Sauer or a machine pistol or a shotgun or a plasma rifle that he stole from the Eldritch occult Nazi weapons division and then murdered the Nazis with. But in Canada, you get standing ovations and you get applauded and celebrated. It's just weird, right? I mean, I don't know, even Poland is like Poland also it has many problems and is unfortunately has large faraway elements. But even Poland is at least saying, well, we gotta deal with this Nazi Canada. You can't just be letting these Nazis running around, and getting standing ovations from the entirety of Canadian Parliament along with Zelensky. So Hunka was an honored guest sitting in the parliamentary gallery when Zelensky visited Canada last week and addressed the lawmakers. House of Commons Speaker Anthony Rota invited Hunka and recognized him as a hero who fought for Ukrainian independence from Russia during the Second World War. Okay, so now you can see maybe it's because anyone who fights against Russia, all Nazism can be forgiven if you fight against Russia. And the reality is that's the United States. That's Britain, that's France, that's Europe, that's the West, that's that's if you fight Russia, right? Whether you're Mussolini, Churchill backed Mussolini, Britain backed Hitler when it was convenient for them. Henry Ford made billions of dollars making Nazi planes and automobiles and guns and bullets, right? And so that is the truth, which is that if you fight communists or anyone that the U.S. don't particularly like, even if Russia is a communist at this moment, but they're like somebody that the United States is not happy with. The United States will support you, and Canada will give standing ovations to their Nazis that they created by funding and backing far right, and usually they can get away with it because they basically separate the Nazis from themselves. They have what they call it in the DC, they call it a cutout, right? They kind of have this money that flows through this secret invisible backdoor train, and they go to somewhere else where the Nazis are, right? Talk to them in secret meetings, right? Like Victoria Nuland in Ukraine in 2014, who currently is the in the Biden's cabinet. So, you go over there, you do the secret meeting, you help the Nazis, you fund the Nazis, you say you have all the weapons and guns and the blessing of the United States and Europe, and you have the blessing of Britain, you have the blessing of Italy and France and the United States and Canada. Go fight those people that we want you to fight, right? And then as soon as if the Nazi comes into the U.S., they kind of want to distance themselves from them, right? But at all times, the West has always been pro-fascism at all times. There's never not been a time. The liberals and conservatives, the ruling classes of the West, absolutely, and much of the population. So that's the honest reality. I'm obviously I'm like how is this possible? But that's the honest reality. So, but let's come back to this. Nazis equals bad Russian propaganda. So as part of the Soviet Union was an ally of Canada and the Western allies in the struggle against fascism in World War II. So anyone who fought against Russia on the side of Hitler. Critics say that fact should have been known to Trudeau and especially to his Deputy Prime Minister Trudeau Freeland, who is a scholar of Russian and Ukrainian history. We're going to get to Trudeau Freeland. Very interesting character, Trudeau Freeland. Deputy Prime Minister of Canada and granddaughter of another Ukrainian Nazi collaborator. Yet they joined in hailing Hunka anyway. So one of two things, right? Either Justin Trudeau had no idea this guy was a Nazi from the SS who murdered Jewish people and ethnic minorities and raped ethnic minorities and marginalized people. Either Justin Trudeau knew that or didn't know that, and he was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I accidentally brought a Nazi." Highly, highly, highly improbable because of the kind of vetting you have to go through just to even get into Parliament to do an official event, right? Highly, highly improbable. It's basically not, nobody believes that, with the exception of some, I'll be nice, just say with the exception of some, but Justin Trudeau, he knew that. They all knew this, right? I don't know what they thought they were going to do. It's unclear exactly. I think there's a lot of theories. Like some people said, well, basically Canada needs the Ukrainian fascist vote to keep Justin Trudeau needs the backing of the Ukrainian fascists and the Canadian fascists, just white fascists in general in Canada, to stay in power because Canada is full of fascists. Even though they don't sig heil on the street all day, right? They might say Slava Ukraini instead. Or maybe they just say these indigenous people and all this wokeism is a problem. Sometimes the Nazis say that. Sometimes they're just liberals that when you scratch them, then the fascist comes out, right? But Canada needs the Ukrainian fascist vote. And so Justin Trudeau signals that to that mass of Ukrainian and other fascist Canadians by bringing the Nazi on. And yeah, I think some people think one theory is that Justin Trudeau knew that this was going to cause blowback, right? And Canadian Parliament also knew that this was going to cause this outcry. How could you bring a Nazi? How could you bring a Nazi? But then this is part of a larger Western U.S., Canada, European, U.S. and NATO, all the allies, rehabilitation of fascism and Nazism. So this is like, in the beginning, people will be disturbed because we've been led, we've been led to believe. I have a whole thread about Wolfenstein. We're going to get to, Magneto from X-Men, right? Saving Private Ryan, Steven Spielberg movies about killing Nazis, Schindler's List. You've got all of this anti-Nazi stuff that's been out for the last 80 years, right? What's the other one? I'm going to get to, Magneto, Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford punching Nazis, right? But now the United States and the West are preparing to manufacture a new consensus reality where Nazis weren't that bad. In fact, fascism isn't all that incorrect. In fact, white supremacists, I mean, as long as, there are some races, maybe they are better than others. I think that's one theory, is that this is a consolidation of the dying Western, which is the white supremacist colonial capitalist power, into mask off white supremacy, which is, and so that means that now Nazism will be okay. And you could even be Jewish, but you have to support Nazism, right? Because that's the only people we can get to fight against, counter hegemonic forces like Russia and China. So Japan also, to bring, that's a scarier thought, which is that the West is going to go full Nazi now. It's going to go full fascist, full supremacist, because in fact Japan is launching anime. Japan is the Pacific Theater Germany when it came to imperial capitalist colonialists against communists and anti-colonial, the colonial people, colonized peoples, right? That's really what World War I and II were all about. And so Japan is also doing Americans are also doing imperial Japan apologia in case they need to support Japan in a war like they support Ukraine, right? So the Japanese government actually promoted a short isekai anime movie in 2022 to promote their territorial claim to South Korea Islands, in which a girl gets hit by a car, wakes up in 1945, and experiences the Soviet invasion of the island. So this is about the Japan getting back to the roots of Japanese fascism. Obviously, Shinzo Abe and his family, the fascist, the Nazi equivalent in Asia, Japan. Their people, and also American. One theory also is that weebs, right? American, Western, Canadian, white lovers, appreciators of the Japanese products like anime and all the robot dogs and all their waifus and all this stuff. That I like Ghost. I just got the Ghost in the Shell hardcover, post 2017 live action movie novelization. I just want to actually read it for myself. That's whatever. But Americans supporting Japanese fascism specifically, and Japanese whatever it is, but it's going to be far right. Rehabilitation and forgiveness or ignorance, forgiveness of, apologia for the fascism that the Japanese fascists did is part of a new war, because that's going to be a major theater if the U.S. can get it started to start fighting a hot war on China, like Ukraine is a hot proxy war on Russia. So and this is all part. So the incorporation of Nazism back into acceptable Overton window of American, Canadian, European, Japanese, Australian, etc. politics and common parlance, So this is because it doesn't really compute, right? It doesn't really compute. How can all of you not know that guy was the SS? No, it's actually sadly more probable and dangerously more probable that Canada and the United States, which United States runs Canada, so they're all little puppets ultimately, but they do make their personal decisions to go along with this, of course. So as a vassal of the United States, that and so, but Canada is choosing to go with this, and all the Parliament, right, is choosing to empower Nazism, to say Nazism, fascism. These are the lesser of two evils, right? It used to be like Democrat is the lesser of the two evils of Democrat Republican, but now it's like Nazism is the lesser of the two evils, right? It's either Russianism or Nazism, right? So it's either we support Russia or we support Nazism. So Nazism is the lesser of the two evils. If you fought Russians, then you're a good guy, right? And so and everybody has to fight Russians now. So that means Canadians, we're all going to be Nazis now. Okay, we just got to celebrate Hunka. Let's get out there. No more Indiana Jones. No more punching Nazis. No more anti-fascism. No more Antifa. No more Antifa super soldiers. Antifa mecha Godzillas. No more Indiana. I mean, for the young people, no more Wolfenstein. Okay. No more Magneto. No more Saving Private Ryan's. Never Saving Ryan's Private. No more World War II movies about fighting Nazis. Okay. Captain America. No more Captain America. No more Captain America fighting Nazis. Well, Captain America can be a Nazi. So Captain America can get a swastika. But we're not fighting Nazis because the lesser of two evils is to be Nazis. So we're all going to be Nazis now. We're going to be Nazis and we're going to be Japanese fascists. Like, we are Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine. We stand with Nazis. And we stand with Japanese fascism because that's the lesser of two evils. So that is where the U.S. I think that sadly that's why I go. You don't want to be. Who wants to be part of? Who he wants to be part of that project to go to the final stage of the death of Western colonial capitalism, imperialism, and fascism that are all the same thing. I don't know. As Native Hawaiians, we have to. Be de facto we in practice actually sovereign because we can't be a part of this project of full Nazis, full mask off Nazism for the entire Western world. I mean, unless I don't see nobody's come up with a plausible argument other than that. No, there isn't. There is none. Okay, so anyways, the idea that Canada doesn't know is nonsense. Canada knows what they're doing. The Parliament of Canada knows what they're doing. So anyways, also why Indigenous people and Black people, people of color, Indigenous people who are against the United States and Canada as power structures have to be supported, right? I mean, because the other side is if you say if Canada and the United States are full Nazi, which they are, then and the people that are standing against those those plutocracies and governments that they're not democracies. I mean, the average citizen, like every citizen, right? Every citizen or person who is in what's called Canada didn't stand up and celebrate that Nazi, right? So not every Canadian hasn't been clapping for the Nazi, but now every Canadian will have to choose: will they go along with their full Nazi parliament, right? Or will the Canadian population make another choice to support the Indigenous people and the actual left people who are standing against their government, and which is 3 oil companies in a trench coat ultimately, their colonial capitalist genocidal government that loves Nazis. It's actually I kind of appreciate what Canada has done. I wish the United States would bring Hitler to Washington D.C. and then I wish that maybe Zelensky and a Nazi could come to Washington D.C. and all of the Congress, AOC, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, right? I wish they could all stand up and applaud a Nazi so that we could be very clear, right? And then we know which side you're on in the United States. the President Biden, right? The Supreme Court, everybody standing ovate that Nazi because you all are, right? And then we'll know what it for Black and Indigenous and people of color like myself. We any of us who have not been fully brainwashed and have unbrainwashed ourselves to some extent, we know that that's who the U.S. is. But it would be good for the rest of the people, right? The white people of the United States and Canada and the West, and the ones that are brainwashed, to know that. So I wish that the U.S. bring a Nazi, and then we can see who they are. Anyways, but back to Wolfenstein. So I'm not joking about that either, but I do think I like Wolfenstein is a fun game. The thing that I am joking about is that it's Russian propaganda. The joke is that this is Russian propaganda. That makes no sense at all. That makes no sense. It sucks that I can't play Wolfenstein 3D now because it's Russian propaganda to fight Nazis. Here's my little thread though. Okay. After the end credits, the surviving Nazis of Wolfenstein get on a plane and they live happy little lives in the United States. Obviously, okay, at the end credits of Wolfenstein, that's not what happens. But that is what happens in the real world. Right? So these are the allies. We defeated the Nazis, and then the Nazis. Werner von Braun, head of NASA. Walter Hallstein, Nazi officer, head of the EU Commission. Adolf Huizinger, NATO's chief of staff. Sometimes I joke, I go, oh, NATO, the Nazi Atlantic Treaty Alliance, Treaty Organization? No, it's literally, it was run by Adolf the Nazi, not the Hitler, the other one. It's Nazi NATO. Ursula von der Leyen, you look at her family history, it's disgusting. What's that guy's name? Everyone in NATO. It's Nazi NATO is what it is. Kurt Waldheim, Secretary General of United Nations. Okay, so this is what happened after the United States didn't defeat Nazis. The United States profited from Nazis, backed the Nazis, pretended to. Some Americans who, like, the thing, right? There were Americans, right? There were Americans who were like one of them actually was he's constantly he's always talking about things the United States military is doing, right? So I said, like, just because all of Parliament and the United States Congress, President, and Supreme Court are all pro-Nazi, that doesn't mean that every person, all 330 million people, have to be pro-Nazi, right? Like who that Feinstein that just died. There was a little I had another thread yesterday. I'm gonna go through it right now, but one person who was definitely an American soldier who is not on the side of Nazis, right? Where was that one? Okay, I lost it. It's somewhere in here. No, it's not in there. The wrong one. Shit. Here, yeah. So Dianne Feinstein, right? And this is from Margaret Kimberly, who is also from the Black Agenda Report, which is a very good site you should check out. It said we talk about Feinstein just died yesterday. Senator Dianne Feinstein, who lied into wars, committed horrible genocide like Nazis by supporting all the genocidal racist wars, like the wars in Iraq. And what Scott Ritter is, his grandpa, he's somebody who's often talking about the problems with the Ukraine wars, that it's about supporting Nazis, and he worked as a weapons inspector for the United States in Iraq, and that's part of what turned him to kind of speak out against what the United States has been doing, because his grandpa fought against the Nazis in World War II, and he's like, why are we supporting Nazis in this Ukraine war right now? Right. And so some Americans, I mean, you can, and he's a white guy, right? You can be an American and you can be like, I don't want to support fascism as my entire government is going down with that ship, right? Or it never hasn't been, but the liberals and the conservatives and the ruling classes, the government and the business elite, they've always been on that side of fascism. That's how they get their biggest money. is by using fascism to stop the anti-communism. Is rooted. Liberalism and fascism are all rooted in anti-communism. That's the one of them is like the richer, wealthier, higher educated commanders and profiteers, and the lower one is the foot soldiers, right? That's the difference. The difference between a liberal and a fascist is one is a foot soldier, one is the commander, right? And so now most Americans don't realize that, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean you can't. And so right, but if in case you didn't, there's way more history about this, but you look into that Operation Paperclip. Okay, it's just like one of many things you can look into. Christopher Freeland's granddad. Okay, so now we come to Christopher Freeland. Also, what is Big Teo? Christopher Freeland is the deputy prime minister. She's right under Justin Trudeau. Christopher Freeland's granddad was indeed a Nazi collaborator. Let me see if I can get that one. And so she's one of the major backers of the war in Ukraine. She's one of the major anti-Russia. The coincidence behind Canada's Nazi honoring. So the grandfather Christopher Freeland, Canada's deputy prime minister, worked for a Nazi newspaper that recruited for the Galicia division of the Waffen-SS. Yeah, so that was the connection. Yeah, so the newspaper, right, that recruited for the Waffen-SS, the Nazi fighters, which is the same division that this Yaroslav Hunka fought for. So I mean, it's possible that the Nazi that Canada brought to Parliament was a friend of her grandpa's, right? Because he was a propagandist to recruit Nazis. That's who her grandpa was. Right now that Canadian Parliament has ignited an international conversation about the dark side of Ukrainian nationalism, we are giving a standing ovation to Waffen-SS veteran Yaroslav Hunka. It might be worth revisiting the Deputy Prime Minister Christopher Freeland's grandfather and his role in recruiting young men like Hunka to the Nazi cause. During Ukrainian President Zelensky's September 22nd House of Commons visit, Freeland was one of hundreds of parliamentarians who stood to applaud after now former Speaker of the House, Anthony Rota. So one guy resigned, that guy. But really, every member of Parliament should be resigning from government, right? If Canada, so it's like, well, what can Canada do? What can Canada do to right this problem of being in league with the United States and Ukraine and NATO and the EU in being pro-Nazism, pro-fascism, celebrating Nazis? If every single member of Parliament, I mean, if they had any decency, right? If they had a single shred of respect for the millions of Jewish people that were murdered by Nazis, or the millions of other ethnic minorities that were murdered by Nazis, and if Canada wanted to pretend to be a place of human rights and racial equality, every single member of Parliament would be resigning right now. Justin Trudeau would be gone, right? He would resign out of shame, right? Out of knowingly inviting a Nazi, being shamed into being revealed that he was in fact pro-Nazism and all of Parliament was pro-Nazism, they would all resign. But the thing is, the fact that they're not resigning says that's what speaks the loudest, which is that all of Canadian Parliament, I mean, whether you're Indian, you're black in Parliament, you're Jagmeet Singh, he's obviously a South Asian, if you're Canadian, if you're gay in Parliament. To be clear, you can collaborate while not even being a white. Like Zelensky is a Jewish person who is making millions of dollars working with his Nazi friends in America. This Jewish comedian making tons of money, working with fascists, right? Kolomoisky is a billionaire in Ukraine. He's made billions, right? So again, the Nazis, they prefer a white leadership, but at the end of the day, they will work for whoever they can work for. The foot soldiers, right? Sometimes the foot soldiers will turn on their commanders, the liberal imperialists, but at the end of the rich. But at the end of the day, you have a lot of collaborators, right? If you look at the Parliament, right, while they're clapping for the Nazi, if you look at that Parliament, look, there's a brown guy right next to him, right? There's a non-white guy right there. There's several brown and at least one or two black faces, right? You have Asian faces in there, right? These are all collaborators with the Nazi. So all of Canada there's an Asian woman right there, or it looks like one anyway. and you can make a lot of money doing that. That's the Democratic Party. That's the Liberal Party. So, let's come back here. Anyway, so but yeah, that's more. You can read more about her. I recommend anybody look into her. So also, how do you have a Nazi like Chrystia Freeland, right? How do you have a Nazi like Chrystia Freeland as deputy prime minister, right? That's like Kamala. That's like Hitler being the vice president of the United States, right? Like some people say, I don't think Justin Trudeau is a Nazi. Well, obviously he's not died in the wool. Maybe he's not died in the wool Nazi, but he's a liberal who is the liberal. Liberal is the commander of the Nazis. So that's what his job is, right? And his second in command is a dyed in the wool Nazi. That lady right there. And also the fact that he's standing over, so there's like, by giving the standing ovation, by not getting up from the table when the Nazis sit down, you're part of the Nazis, right? By being neutral in the face of massive oppression, you are the Nazi. And also, but giving the standing ovation is worse than neutral. That is pro the oppression. Anyways, so I've said that a lot, but you can look into more of this. This is the newspaper that Chrystia Freeland's grandpa worked for. This is the Ukrainian Nazi propaganda that he wrote. Anyways, but I just randomly chose that article site because it was one that was easy to get to. And so, people have a choice what they want to do with that, but you should know that your government, that's who it is. After the end credits of surviving Nazis in Wolfenstein, the surviving Nazis in Wolfenstein get on a plane and live a happy life ever after US. The US is filled with Nazis. Argentina has a lot of Nazis, right? Argentina has many, all over Europe there's Nazis. They were all in power, right? The EU is just run by Nazis. It still is. Look up Borrell, who is Joseph Borrell. He famously said, the EU is Europe is a garden and the rest of the world is a jungle, and the garden has to go into the rest of the world and cleanse the jungle. That's just Nazi stuff. That's just fascist, right? So this guy is the Spanish politician serving as the high representative of the Union of Foreign Affairs and Security Policy with the European Union. So the European Union has historically been run by Nazis and continues to, like this guy, right? Like Ursula von der Leyen. She looks like Frau Hitler. She looks like a freaking Nazi when you just look at her. I mean, not to judge people based upon their looks, but just like, it's not just her looks. It's kind of the kind of looks that she gives. They're like this dead eye look. It's kind of like Mazie Hirono and Victoria Nuland. They have this dead eye, like the eyes that like eat a million children, like with famine and plague and sanctions and wars of aggression, which she's supported. And so she is the Ursula von der Leyen is, of course, the German politician and the president of the European Commission, also famous for saying that we need to basically by any means necessary, including using Nazis, get rid of Russia. We have to resubjugate China, and just amazing stuff. But this is who runs the European Union, and it is in an unbroken succession since World War II of Nazi and fascist far right leaders of the European Union, right? And also obviously liberal capitalist, plutocrats who want to keep their wealth, and a lot of these people are both. Some of them are more ideologue, but at minimum they are. Some of them are, again, standing ovation, enthusiastic support for white supremacy, colonialism, which is about, the white race dominating other races and taking their wealth and capital, trillions of it. Some of them are not as enthusiastic, but they don't care to stop it, right? But most of them are actually, in Europe, they're very enthusiastic about white supremacy, like in Canada. So, Okay, anyway, let's move on though. So bummer that we can't, but speaking of Argentina, I talked about Europe, and now let's talk about Argentina. So in X-Men First Class, it's a bummer that we can't watch X-Men First Class because when Magneto kills Nazis, that's Russian propaganda. Spoiler: Magneto isn't defeated by the X-Men, but by the United States for trying to kill their Nazis. So this is a scene actually where Magneto, played by Michael Fassbender, X-Men First Class bars. I don't know if I can get the actual scene. Yeah, so in X-Men First Class, Magneto walks into a bar. Magneto, who is Eric, was it Lensher? What's his last name? It's like Eric Lensher. Yeah, Lensher. Eric Lensher, Magneto, right? He was forced to live in a death camp during the Holocaust. In case the United States and Canada have already rewritten the history books so far that they've erased the Holocaust. A lot of, the U.S. is like never forget, right? Jewish Nazi collaborator Zelensky of Ukraine is like never forget. Oh, except forget now though. So in case the United States has made you forget, right? Forced forgetting. In case the United States has committed more menticide upon you and you don't remember that there was a Holocaust orchestrated by Nazis, that's where I actually don't know. I don't know what they're teaching in school now. I mean, they're teaching that, black people benefited from slavery. So I don't know where the U.S. is. So I don't know what actually. I'm not even joking there. As a boy, Eric was forced to live in a death camp during the Holocaust, which is where the Nazis, white supremacists in Germany, massacred with Zyklon B, among other gases. Horrible, gassing to death. Baking in ovens and all kind of other horrible ways they slaughter Jewish people. In case you didn't know that, because maybe the United States has buried that, and maybe Canada and Europe have buried that because they need to enable Nazism. When the first incarcerated with his family, Eric pulled apart a metal gate as he was separated from his parents. Seeing this, the Nazi collaborator and secret mutant Sebastian Shaw had Eric brought to him. He was fascinated by the boy's potential and attempted to get him to move a German coin. When this failed, he had his mother brought in and threatened to kill her if he couldn't succeed in moving the coin. When it didn't work, he shot the woman, causing Eric to tear apart the lab in horror. Shaw then tortured him over the next several years in an attempt to draw out the boy's mutant powers. So Eric, the history of Magneto, right? The history of Magneto is one that originated in the Nazi death camps. The Auschwitz, the Buchenwald, the extermination camps for people based upon their ethnic background, sexual orientation, religion, being foreigner or not, hair color, skin color, and these types of things. So Magneto's story is actually one, and X-Men also does directly is highly focused upon prejudice, racism, stereotyping, and obviously fascism, which is the ultimate end of ideologies that believe in the supremacy of particular people, races over others, right? Like Nazism. So that's who Magneto actually is. So actually, like watching, so when I said that, like watching X-Men, and so in this one, right? So in this Magneto X-Men First Class, I already got the bar scene here, right? I don't know if I can play this because I don't want to get in trouble with the YouTube. Okay, so but X-Men's bar scene, right, is when Eric, who is he was an ethnic minority. I think he was Jewish, if I'm not mistaken, right? He's a Jewish man, who was Jewish during the Nazi Holocaust, and his family were murdered, and he was tortured by Nazis, right? And so in this scene in the bar, Eric visits Argentina because he's hunting Nazis now, because obviously, right? Like, I mean, just one other movie I will throw out that is now Russian propaganda is Inglourious Bastards. right? If you don't know this movie, this is a movie by Christoph Waltz and Quentin Tarantino, where they go around and hunt Nazis, right? There's the Bear Jew, right? What the Bear Jew is apparently a fake Jewish Russian propagandist because killing Nazis is Russian propaganda, right? This is Brad Pitt and the Jewish director, what's his name? Holly knows. That go through Germany and hunt and kill Nazis because they're fucking horrible people who believe in horrible ideology, right? This is the Jew hunter. His name is I forget his name, but his name is Jew. It's played by Christoph Waltz, who is the principal antagonist in this movie, right? It's obvious he's obviously the bad guy, and the protagonists are hunting people like that, right? So, but you can't watch this movie because Inglourious Basterds is now Russian propaganda, because Nazis are good actually in the West, right? In the new consensus reality that is about pretending like cognitive dissonance doesn't exist, I guess. I don't know. On the other hand, the West, being a Westerner, is about living in perpetual cognitive dissonance and being reprogrammed by the lying disinformational systems of imperialism and capitalism and that control you. So I don't know. I don't know where America is to in Canada. I mean, I don't know. It's a question. It's a question for the chat. Do you believe that the United States, Canada, and Europe can be convinced that Nazism and fascism are good? I don't know. I mean, they did it to Germany, and they did it to a lot of Ukraine. So I mean, I don't know what the plan is for this. I don't know what the plan is for this. But coming back to Eric, right? So Eric, in the scene, he goes into that bar, right, and he's hunting the Nazis. And Eric Lancer is a mutant with the ability to telepathically control magnetic fields, but a Jewish man hunting down the Nazis who played a part in the death of his mother and destruction of his people in the death camps. In this scene, he finds himself in Argentina, a country known to be housing Germans on the run from justice after World War II. He's looking for Klaus Schmidt, the man who personally killed his mother. But any Nazi will do, and when he walks into a bar serving Deutsch beer, you just know things aren't going to end well. So the thing is, in this scene, he looks for the people that are somebody specific says, I don't just want any beer. I want the Deutsch beer. I want the German beer. And that's how he kind of like, it's one of the signals that give away. Like he actually like interrogates people there. He's like, so what did you do before you came here? Right. It's a perfectly paced moment. This tension slowly being ratcheted up by the music and growing suspicion that the stranger isn't just there for a sup. It's not so subtle anti-Semitism in the pig farmer lie. So the guy says something like, what did you do? Right. Magneto asks one of the guys at the bar, what did you do before you came to Argentina? Right. Obviously a very German looking, German accented guy asking for specifically German beer. Right. But Magneto is like, well, I want to make sure that who this guy is. And the guy says, well, in Germany, I was a pig farmer. Like he doesn't say I was a Nazi and I exterminated the Jews. Right. So, right, coming back to Trudeau Freeland, right, and coming back to Mr. Stepan Bandera. So he's saying like, well, you know, Canada didn't say, oh, well, we love this Nazi. What they did was they gave a guy a standing ovation, but they kind of couched it in like, well, they didn't put a swastika on him, but he did say Slava Ukraini, and he is a Nazi, right? So similarly, right, in Magneto, nobody actually says I'm a Nazi, right? But when he interrogates him, they say I was a pig farmer. The other guy says, oh yeah, I herded the sheep, or they make these comments and they say these things that signify, right, that they are pro-fascist. That yeah, I killed the Jews. It's when Nazis recruit, which they do in gaming forums, and Steve Bannon backed the whole work with all of his friends in the global far right and the United States and the CIA to route, and Facebook and the tech companies to rouse up a global far right with the NAFO fellows and the fucking 4chan and Reddit right wingers and all of this U.S. and Western operations to back a global rising right wing, including in North South America, the Alternative for Deutschland, the Alternative for Sweden, all of Ukraine's government that's run by Nazis now. is all, you know, about. They don't say, oh yeah, we're all Nazis. Let's all go and kill a bunch of Jewish people, right? Let's all go kill a bunch of ethnic minorities in the Donbass. They don't say that. What they do is they kind of imply, like, isn't it? They ask questions. Why do we have so many of these immigrants? Why do we this? And then they have code, right, for everything, because it's not as palatable to just come out and say who the Nazis are, which is that, like, hey, yeah, I love killing people because I like killing people, and also I believe that I'm better than people because of, you know, random arbitrary characteristics that I happen to be born with, and I'm just a fucked up person, right? Yeah, that doesn't sound very good, right? But what sounds better is like, we got to get rid of those pesky X, Y, Z, right? And when they talk to each other, they'll say things like, yeah, I do X. In America, just as one idea, after Ahmaud Arbery, the Nazis that are rife in the United States, they will actually refer, and the black community knows this. I remember I was watching Black Power Media; they were talking about this. Ahmaud Arbery was murdered by white people who saw him jogging down the street, and they just got out of their car, chased him down. He's like, I'm just running, and they just got out of the car, two men, and they just murdered him, right? And he was jogging, right? He was just jogging down the street. And so, because, you know, the United States is just run by fascism and Nazis, and that number one, the white people who murdered him were never prosecuted. They just let it go until it blew up, because black people and people of color on social media were like, what the fuck is happening, right? Because the United States is a Nazi country, right? That installed Werner von Braun and the NATO head and etc. And all of the U.S. is run by Nazis. So when the Americans started talking about it, when the pro-fascist Americans started talking about it, I mean, they started referring to any black person, Oprah, Obama. I'm not a fan of either of those people, but any black person, they were called. We need to do something about those joggers, right? Because Ahmaud Arbery was jogging, so that's one way that that fascists will signal to each other, right, what side they're on, right? It would be like, we have to deal with the joggers. It means we should kill black people, right? Because Ahmaud Arbery was jogging. And so similarly, that's right. Which America's just full of these people, you know. They run the police, they run everything in the United States. And so when Eric is like trying to find out, he asked them, "What did you do?" Right? So he said, "You know, I was a pig farmer." It's a euphemism for I ran the death camps. I was an officer, right? I took the tubes and filled the cylinders that piped the nerve gas into the chambers that the Jewish people were in, and then they died, suffocating to death, right? I tortured Jewish people. I turned their skin into lamps and all kind of horrible, disgusting things, right? So when you say I was a pig farmer, you know, it just as another one, right? So in Ukraine, what they will do is they will refer to, like, one signal is when you talk about orcs, right? Ukrainian Nazis and the global far right will often refer to orcs. Now, we're not talking, I mean, obviously, Tolkien was also a racist, but that's just normal. Being a Westerner is just being a racist, supremacist, believer in the master race above others, right? Orcs, humans above orcs, and the elves being the greatest. Elves being from Linden, also known as the Anglo-Saxons, above the greater, superior to the general white races, that's the humans, and at the bottom is the orcs. Those are black, brown, and Asians that Tolkien fought and murdered as part of the Western militaries in World War I. But the Ukrainian fighters refer to orcs, and they dip their bullets in pig fat for specifically the Muslim Chechens in order to send them to their hell. And they take pride, and like the Ukrainian Nazis of the 2020s, and the 2010s that are currently, most of the reality is most of Azov and most of the Ukrainian far right have been murdered, but now they're always recruiting more. So this is actually why Canada and Europe need to kind of solidify Nazism as a deeply Canadian ideology, so that, because the Russians have already killed most of the Nazis. They did Nazified much of the Ukrainian military. So more young Ukrainians and young Canadians, young white people, have to go to Ukraine, right? The West is running out of Nazis because they keep getting killed by the Russians, kind of like in World War II. So what the West is trying to do is trying to get Americans and Canadians and Europeans. Remember all those Americans going, I'm volunteering. I fought in Vietnam. I fought in Iraq, and I'm going to get down there and kill me some Russians, right? I'm going to, so the United States is the U.S. and the West, is the liberal capitalist imperialist fascists, are constantly looking for more people to ship out into Ukraine, maybe Poland, wherever else they need to fight them, Russians, to stop the spread of decolonization, socialism, and just multipolarity. So that's actually a real danger, which is that a lot of the U.S. and Canada's goals is to turn their countries into Nazi farms, so that there's young people that go fly around the world and murder. Right. That's actually who the military is. Actually, about 50% right wing, just dyed in the wool fascists who want to kill brown people, and about 50% poor, mostly black and brown people who just need some money for college tuition and money for they have no house because they're highlighting receipts in a Texas Walmart. I actually knew some of these people. So some of them are like black, brown, and some poor white people who just need some money. They sign up for the military. But how about half the military is middle to upper middle class white fascists who like killing Muslims in Iraq. They like killing black people in Africa. They like killing them some CHINK in Korea, Vietnam. So most of the military is actually, that's actually like this. The liberals did studies. The Britain did studies. They found that only fascists, mobs, and like mobsters, they're like smaller scale capitalists in cities, and religious zealots. So like crystal fascism, like unhinged Judeo-Christian wingnuts, and then just the white supremacists, which a lot of them, there's a lot of overlap, and then some of the thug mobsters who they're like mercenary types, like the Blackwater people. Those are the three groups they can get to fight and kill, right? And then but if you impoverish the population enough, this is why everyone's broken U.S. You can force them into the military, some of them, but they're not going to fight as hard. The people who fight and kill the most is Nazis. So that's why the United States, they want people in America and Europe always. They talk about equality, freedom. They don't really want that. If they wanted that, they would have done something about all the January 6 people that are in all of their branches of the military government and police. But the United States and the West, they need the Nazis to fight wars around the world to prevent spread of socialism, equality, justice, and any kind of sense of the survivability of the human race that needs to deal with COVID, climate change, and several other problems collectively. So, but that's why they, so when the Nazis refer to, they always use euphemisms like, oh, we're gonna go get orcs. What they mean is, I'm gonna kill Russians because they're Russian, ethnic Russians in the Donbass or in the eastern, in Crimea, in eastern Ukraine. And so anyway, coming back to this, this is where anyway, so let me finish that. Eric Lenzer comes here. He's looking for Klaus Schmidt, the man who personally killed his mother. The tension builds. The growing sense of menace at the mention of his parents. The reveal of the constant. Oh yeah, so there's a not so subtle anti-Semitism in the pig farmer lie, and the growing sense of menace at the mention of his parents. The reveal of the concentration camp tattoo, and the ultimate insult of attacking a Jewish man with a Hitler Youth knife. So like this, so this is like the Canadian Parliament guy, right? Attacking a Jew. Like, it's very similar actually, this scene, because it's a really old. Let's say if Magneto, right, if Magneto was in Canadian Parliament, right, watching this Nazi, right, getting standing ovation, Magneto might like dislodge all the steel from all
Zelensky's
of Christopher Freeland's
a dozen standing
bracelets
ovations.
and the
There
metal
was
in all
also
of her
one
diamonds.
for this man,
Magneto would dislodge all the metal from all of these Canadian
Ukrainian independence
Nazi
against the
supporting
Russians
generals'
during the Second World
lapels,
War.
right? Magneto would come into this
received at least a dozen
hall of
standing
Nazis
ovations.
called Canadian government.
There was also one for this man,
Rip out all the steel rebar from the walls and impale every one of these people,
for
probably.
Ukrainian
Because
independence against the Russians
how can you all be
during the
loving
Second
this
World
Nazi?
War.
At minimum, he would assassinate the Nazis,
Zelensky's
right? Because that's what he did, right? He's
standing ovations.
Right?
There was also one for this man,
nonagenarian,
a 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian
Nazi youth, and then what he does in this movie. By the way, I should disclaimer that there should not be any violence in anywhere at any time. I'm just saying, like, there's a scene here where there's old Nazis. This is an old guy, right? And he hunts them down. And he finds out how are you still alive, right? This guy, how are you still alive after committing those atrocities during World War II? And then he personally murders them. Well, he didn't murder. He gives them the justice that they were due, which is that he kills them, right? Any Nazi will do. Watching the bar, so yeah. So, anyways, so the guy he does figure it out because he reveals the tattoo, right? And then it reveals the Hitler Youth knife. So you got a Hitler Youth knife and a Nazi tattoo. You still have a Nazi tattoo on you, right? And then the guy gets brought to justice. But do you see it, like, how this doesn't make any sense, right? My point is that, like, how do we go from we have 90-year-old Nazis that have escaped without being brought to justice, be killed by a celebrated Magneto's not the best, he's not the best guy, but I mean Eric's character is sympathetic because he did actually suffer genocide, right? Like direct mass murder genocide based upon his ethnicity. So he does things that are like, oh, I don't know if he should have done that. But this is also common Western, which is that, like, if black or indigenous people do, it's kind of like Killmonger, right? Oh, I'm sorry that you got hurt, but don't actually try to get justice because that would be unacceptable. That's the liberal, which is about confusing everyone with flowery language and enabling Nazism. But in this sometimes, like in this arc, he, like, it's very clear, right? It's very clear, like, that Nazis, fascists, like, doesn't matter how old they are, how long they've, just been relaxing in some South American country far from Auschwitz. If they committed these heinous crimes in Auschwitz, right, then they deserve what was coming to them. They deserve punishment for the crime. Now, and obviously, like, the government of Argentina, which is, unfortunately, the U.S. is involved in a lot of that. Also, they're not at that stage. But the United States, sure as hell, ain't gonna hunt down Nazis in their own backyard. The United States empowers Nazis. Canada sure as fuck ain't gonna hunt down Nazis in its own backyard, right? It's kind of interesting, right? The U.S. makes movies, right? Or this is a movie made in Hollywood. Now, it's not a monolith, right? There's people in Hollywood that were like, well, Nazis are bad, right? The U.S. is like, no, Nazis are good. The U.S. government, right? The U.S. government, U.S. ruling class are like, Nazis are good. But then people in Hollywood are like, well, but Nazis are bad though, right? And if there was a Nazi who did these horrible things and exterminated people, they should be brought to justice. And that's what he does, right? But then you have Canadian, but you see, but then you have Canadian Parliament, standing up and celebrating this guy, right? And now it's like, well, you have a Nazi on your hands. How are you just letting this guy run around free? Why, right? Even Poland is saying, send him to Poland and they will bring him to justice. And Poland is not like a bastion of leftism. Poland has lots of right-wing elements inside of it. And it's also heavily, to a large degree, vassalized by the U.S. But even Poland is going like, we want that Nazi so we can bring him to justice, right? So, so it's anyway. So I mean, obviously none of this, it doesn't make sense. But that's the cognitive dissonance of being in the West. But obviously, so that's why you can't watch X-Men. If you watch X-Men, you're a Russian propagandist. Magneto isn't defeated by the X-Men, but by the US for trying to kill the Nazis. So that's actually what happened. So Magneto lost because when Magneto tried to go and assassinate the far right in Bolivia for being fascists, the United States killed Eric Lancer because he tried to stop their Nazis. That's how Magneto died. Magneto went to Ukraine and fought on the side of Russia against Nazis, and then the US killed Magneto. That's how he died. Sorry. It wasn't Professor X. It wasn't Wolverine. It wasn't Jean Grey. It wasn't the Beast, and it wasn't Storm. You know, as Halle Berry has a very cool look in the early noughties X-Men, which I've done a video about previously on this YouTube channel. But it was actually the United States and the CIA that took out Magneto because he tried to stop the Nazis that the United States put in power. So rip Magneto. Next time, don't fuck with the United States. And it's like literally, it's kind of like just some random Nazi in Argentina, right? Just some random Nazi in Argentina, right? Just a lower level former soldier, former, even sergeant or something. That's nothing compared to taking top Nazi officials and putting them in charge of the U.S. government and putting them in charge of all of Europe, right? This is way worse, right? What? How do you fighting Nazis when you're putting all these people in charge of the United Nations? Like what? You have this Nazi loving Nazi propagandist with a Nazi grandpa in charge of Canada, like the second in charge of Canada. You know that the United States is like, oh yeah, we need Freeland there so that we can keep on backing our Ukrainian diaspora, radicalization, so that we can keep support for our fascist fighters, our American supported fascist fighters in Ukraine. Bummer that we can't watch it anyway. So Indiana Jones also. So Indiana Jones also, sadly, rip Harrison Ford's career of one of his most celebrated characters. Indiana Jones is a Russian propagandist. Here we see Harrison Ford. I believe he's a Jewish and something else, but I think it's Russian and Jewish, Russian Jew. So we have Indiana Jones played by Jewish person Harrison Ford punching Nazi, and that is Russian propaganda. Very sad. Rip Indiana Jones. You can't be watched anymore because you punched Nazis. Anyway, so obviously, I wrote an article about this about several years ago. Well, let me see if I can find it. I'll be able to find it. Is this the one? No, that's not it. There is an article I wrote. Maybe it's gone now. You have the link in the chat. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry. Holly's got a link of my own article that I cannot find. So shout out to Holly for the a great ability to find things that I need, that I created when I cannot even find my own things. Okay. Should games have social commentary? I wrote this in October 2017. Make America Nazi free again is controversial. This was in 2017. So I remember when I released Neofeud, which was in 2017, all these Nazis came after me. They were like, what is this wokest, social justice bullshit made by this, slur? I got all these N-words all over my Steam page, like on Steam. Oh my God, Twitch. There's like right-wing YouTubers and Twitchers would play the game and they'd just be like dropping like all the most disgusting like F-slurs and anti-Semitic stuff and just like, all this Nazi stuff everywhere. Racist comments, like racist slurs, just like walls of it. I watched one of the first playthroughs of Neofeud was this horrible. I don't even want to say who it is, but it was this horrible Twitch and YouTuber who makes videos about Britain has a Jewish problem, right? What's the problem with white supremacy, right? It's all like, it's all in the insinuative fascist way, right? And they played through Neofeud, and it was like I was like, what the fuck is happening? When I first started streaming, those are the kind of people that would come into my streams all the time on YouTube. Like we had like a 60 people suddenly show up in my YouTube channel, and everybody was like saying like, do you like trans? There was all this like anti-trans stuff and just fucked up stuff. And they're like, ha 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 ha, funny jokes, funny. I'm like, what was funny about saying anti-Semitism and racist slurs like 700 times? Like, I didn't get I was like, it was weird for me because I had been out of the gaming world for a bit. I was just making Neofeud. I was teaching full time in the in the U.S. occupied colony of Hawaii's ghetto, helping kids stay out of crime and off of drugs and onto better opportunities. I was mostly like working and teaching and programming. I wasn't like playing mainstream games. I wasn't playing the Call of Duties. And then all these racists were showing up in my game streams all of a sudden. And I'm watching Neofeud, looking at Steam, looking at Reddit game subreddits, looking at the cyberpunk subreddits, full of the most disgusting stuff, sexist, racist, everything. And so I wrote this article, and then Wolfenstein came out. There was a Wolfenstein, the new Colossus, and all these people were saying Wolfenstein is SJW propaganda. Those weren't Nazis. Those were just, brave, courageous Germans. It's what's happening right now, right? It was in the game community, right? Obviously I should have known. It's like the U.S.-backed Ukrainian and global far right. We're all working together to build global fascism and to try to fight socialism, communism, and anti-colonialism, and maintain white supremacy, as the West always is doing. But I was like, what is happening here? And so I wrote this article. So Make Nazis Free Again. It was a sad bellwether of where we were at, but the fact Bethesda has been reassuring fans that the political appearance of Wolfenstein 2 is all coincidental. Begs the question: should games have social commentary? What role do games play culturally? And so Wolfenstein put out like Make America Nazi Free Again. This was again during the Trump era, right after Trump's election, and everybody was saying, you don't make it political. Don't make it political. How could you make it political by bringing politics into Wolfenstein, right? This is the usual. Don't make it political. Don't make it political. But also, Sig Heil. Why are there any black people and brown people in my video games? Those are the kind of people that show up in my streams too. And so it's really just like, it was wall to wall. I mean, just, especially to be a dude in the 20-teens and the 2020s, really, to this very second. I just saw a black woman said like, was it a black woman or like a white woman? I forget. It doesn't really matter. He's just saying, how do I stop my son from falling into a right-wing fascist pipeline on social media, on YouTube, on Twitch? And I'm like, I don't know. When I look at what men are being sent on YouTube, it's like, oh my, it's horrifying. It's not gone. It's all still here, And white, if you're white, it's even worse. If you're a Westerner, American, European, Canadian, etc., it's horrible. But even in 2017, right? John Carmack, the lead programmer at id Software on legendary games like Doom, story in the game is like story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not important. This might have been true at the time, but the role of story, tone, and generally the impact of games on the societies in which they exist have evolved, whether Wolfenstein franchise wanted that to happen or not. Junk food tastes good, but if all you eat every day is double bacon burgers and French fries, I don't eat fast food because it's $20 for like a Burger King Whopper meal now. And it's like unaffordable, and also it has like not the best ingredients, and it's oversalted when it doesn't need to be. But anyways, if you eat a double bacon burger and French fries every single day, you'll ruin your body, and one day you will probably have that massive heart attack. We are having the cultural equivalent of a massive heart attack. Online gaming culture is hugely toxic. With PewDiePie's, this was back when PewDiePie was big too. When he famously said his hard R, right, N-word. Revealing the tip of that ugly iceberg. Beyond the world of gaming, we have flag-waving, swastika-wearing Nazis marching through American streets. If you don't remember, in this time you had the Nazi nationalist, white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, and then they murdered multiple people vehicular. Not this is every day nowadays, right? With white supremacists driving over indigenous people, black and brown people, just murdering them with cars. The police running over people with cars, and also shooting them all day long. So, half the country lives in poverty. Several dozen cities have poison for drinking water. Our infrastructure is collapsing. It's even worse now. New York is gone. I think New York was just like great flooded out of existence. Or I mean, sadly, it's just really horrible, tragic. I'm not joking about that. It's really terrible what just happened. But a Neofeud is a game that deals with that. I recently released a dystopian point-and-click adventure game called Neofeud that deals with racism, classism, skyrocketing inequality through the lens of science fiction. It was designed to be a compelling, engaging 15-hour-plus experience on its own. But as a person of color who grew up in a ghetto and worked as a teacher or social worker with homeless children and immigrants for years, I definitely had a message to communicate. The cyberpunk dystopia is already here. It's just the society is good at hiding the dystopic parts. The degree and the breadth of that dystopia will spread if nothing is done. Reactions vary from has something to tell and does this in a brilliant way without hitting you in the face with a message, to different and cerebral. And of course, there were folks who did not like Neofeud because it was too political for them. Also, they just didn't like it because they're white supremacists. As a professional game developer who relies on revenue from customers to pay bills, this is a risk I had to consider. What if a lot of people get upset because of political aspects of the game and cause it to fail? But I'd rather be criticized for saying too much than not saying anything. Deus Ex is one of my favorite games of all time. It was a hybrid that took huge risks. It not only revolutionized gaming by introducing the FPS RPG hybrid, but also was one of the first titles to seriously explore a plethora of political and deeply relevant topics at the time. It examined the nature of terrorism, nationalist blowback in the context of neoliberal globalization. Sound familiar? The coming transhuman age and the implications of mass surveillance. Above all, Deus Ex emphasized the need to question everything, especially information sources, something increasingly relevant in our milieu of fake news of all sorts. Today, games like Fortnite are suggesting that an inclusive and positive gaming experience not filled with... This was like back when Fortnite first started, because people were like, maybe the younger people don't want to be surrounded by 30 to 50-year-old just like rabid, racist, sexist barrages, right? Similarly, I applaud Bethesda for doubling down on their anti-Nazi stance, even if it was just marketing, because taking a political stance is always risky. But the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. And I believe that goes for developers and platforms as well. Ultimately, I think we should all double down on taking stands on things we believe in to be right in our games and in society at large, while we still have the relatively free society to do so. Unfortunately, we're much closer to something far less free. I mean, what is free even? But that, it could be a lot worse than what it is in the United States. It could be Ukraine right now, which is a smoldering shithole run by Nazis. Completely. U.S. is run by Nazis, but it's not a smoldering shithole to the extent that Ukraine is, with millions of people displaced and murdered and needlessly dying. The thing is, once the war breaks out, it's very difficult to put that back in the box. The United States doesn't currently have any hot shooting war inside of it yet, right? So that's actually a better place, right? U.S. and Canada obviously are run by, and they are full to the brim with fascists, right? That are celebrating Nazis. But there isn't a war in the U.S. and Canada and the UK where people are openly being bombed and shot every day by the thousands, right? Depending how if you look at what the police are doing to indigenous people, people of color, and the poor, arguably, it's still not to the scale. They're not using HIMARS. The Nazis aren't using HIMARS and artillery to shell Oakland yet, right? The police are rolling out robots. The police are murdering black and brown people every day. The U.S. military is a fascist organization that brings its soldiers home to kill black and brown and poor and marginalized people in the United States on a regular basis, right? But it could be worse. Could be a hot war in the United States and Canada. Now, the United States is trying to avoid that. It likes hot wars around Russia and China. It doesn't want a hot war in its backyard because of NIMBY. But because the Nazi commanders, those are the liberals, they don't want... And conservatives, but they don't want Rockefeller. They want upstate New York. They don't want the exurbs in Texas. They don't want the nice parts of Virginia with the billionaires live, right? They don't want their part of K Street in DC, like in 200 miles of an artillery shell. Now, if you have that breaking out around, in the 800 military bases, 400 which surround China, and many of the other ones are around Russia, that's okay. If you can break out some war in Poland and they can get away with it, that's okay. But so we're not, it's bad, but it's not as bad as it could be yet. And so that's why I think that ultimately, let's end it because I gotta go eat my cheesecake. Because I'll help you made this cheesecake, and I'm very happy, interested to, and excited to try it. But anyways, obviously I don't think that Nazis are good. I do think people should play Wolfenstein 3D. If you ever play Wolfenstein 3D, I like playing, the old. I play Doom all the time. Just like go back and play it. I should probably play some other games, but I just like, I'm old, and in my defense, Warren Spector, his most played game is Solitaire on his iPhone. Like he said that at a conference, and he made Deus Ex with John Romero's help. So I'm just old, and I go back and play these old retro games. But on the other hand, it's kind of like it's weird that you have games like that are Wolfenstein was already controversial in 2017. Controversial, right? Because not because Nazism was being seen, especially in the gaming world, in the tech world, right? In the online computer nerd world, especially like, it's hard to say exactly where, but it was controversial to be shooting Nazis because Nazis might have been good, right? For large portions of the gamer world, especially the dude gamer world, especially the older middle class dude gamer world, right? And now the doomer out, I don't have a girlfriend because I'm a shitty jackass deadbeat dude gamer world. That's like half of YouTube, which is very dangerous. There's a deep, pipeline there. So I don't know what exactly to do with that. But what I do know is that Nazis are still bad. That's a fucked up ideology. Doesn't matter what Trudeau, the United States. One more thing. Anthony Blinken. Just one more. The U.S. is backing Canada on this. The United States is actively in a. The U.S. is actively trying to rehabilitate and rewrite history. It's always doing that. But Anthony Blinken came out and said, what did he say? Of course, he is in the president of the United States cabinet. Came out and said 82 years ago, Nazis murdered 34,000 Jews in Babin Yar. Soviets buried the history. Today, Putin's government manipulates to provide cover for Russia's abuses. So, the U.S. is committed to justice for Holocaust survivors, right? So basically, the Soviet Union, Soviet prisoners of war, were among the people who were massacred at Babin Yar. The Soviets liberated Babin Yar in Kiev. Soviets held a trial in 1946 in Kiev for 15 German policemen involved. So this is the United States Secretary of State got a community note on X/Twitter because he said that the Soviet Union, the Russian communists, murdered or were, he's trying to make it seem as if the Soviet Union was complicit in the murder of tens of thousands of Jewish people. So it's kind of like making Nazis a crime of communists and Soviet. This is deep liberal, which is to say commander of fascists, which is to say colonial capitalist Westernism, right? That's the horseshoe theory, right? Communists and fascists are the same thing. Nazis and the Soviet Union, they were the same thing, two sides of the same coin. And we're the good liberal, New York, London, yoga doing, right? Book writing, Wired article reading, New York Times bestseller guzzling, ayahuasca ritual having. I have a black friend and a Jewish friend, and I'm a billionaire from fucking upstate New York, right? Or from Los Angeles or wherever the fuck. Brussels, Miami, Paris, right? But over there were these Nazis and there were these communists, and they're the same thing. And that's what Blinken is trying to keep doing, right? But all of this is all Nazi apologia also. This is also rewrite. This is complete revisionism of history of what actually happened. But this is the number one goal of the West, the collective West, the United States at the forefront, is to rewrite all of that history of World War II, of the war, which was communists who supported, the equality and were many of themselves Jewish as well. And not every Nazis killed were Jewish. There was any ethnic minorities, and then there were fascists on the other side, who were empowered by capitalists to fight communists because the communists was about overthrowing and destroying capitalism and imperialism. So and the U.S.'s goal this entire time is to take the two opposite sides of that spectrum, bend it all together into a horseshoe, and put them who have been supporting the fascists this whole time on the side of the angels and the goodness, and everyone else being bad. So literally, so this is the, Blinken is just continuing this policy, right? And then also Elon Musk's Twitter and all the tech companies of the West are complicit in removing the notes which do not benefit the U.S. empire. Elon, of course, is a direct beneficiary of that. He's also like, he's a little bit on the fence because he's like, I all my Tesla and all of my tech and all of my shit, China does all of the semiconductors and the puts together all of my cars and all of my solar and all of my 7nm chips I'm gonna need for my cars are gonna be all be coming out of but that's a game that the advanced countries of the world like trying to playing against the West. But still there's enough. The Western social media companies are still beholden to the imperial core of DC to a large extent. So they remove the truth and they scrub it whenever they deem it necessary from the internet. So that's or scrub it from the internet they can control. That's why they don't want anybody to have a Huawei phone. Right? That's why Maduro of Venezuela, speaking of global south, non-white people, they're like, I love my Huawei phone because the U.S. can't spy on me. So anyways, so that's the end though. It's a good time to end. So go back, player Wolfenstein. I obviously I'm not fully being sarcastic about much of this, but what I am being facetious / sarcastic about is that obviously Wolfenstein 3D is not Russian propaganda. Okay, in case you don't deal with and grok the sarcasms well. Nazis are bad. It's not Russian propaganda. You can play Wolfenstein 3D. This is for real. This is not a joke. The U.S. installed Nazis all around the world and didn't defeat Nazism, but they pretended they did. They parachuted in, and the Soviet Union did 95+% of the fighting, including on the Japan side as well. Trudeau Freeland's granddad, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, is indeed a Nazi collaborator, and she is a fascist as well. Do watch X-Men First Class and watch and take joy when the Nazis get killed by Magneto. Do watch Indiana Jones if you would like to, and take joy when the Nazi gets his face punched in and beat up by Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford was asked recently, what do you think Indiana Jones would do today? It's controversial to punch white supremacists. So Harrison Ford, what do you think? And Harrison Ford was just like, he would be first in line to be punching the Nazis. What are you asking me that question for? But would you see how that was a question that a reporter thought it would be appropriate to ask Harrison Ford, because fascism is kind of coming back. Maybe it's okay now, right? Even Harrison Ford is like, what, right? Because he's a Jewish person. He's like, how are you even asking me this? How are you asked? Of course, Indiana Jones will be first in line to punch the goddamn Nazi, right? No, that's because Nazism has always really been at least quietly in, but now it's loudly coming back in the U.S., Canada, and the Western countries. So watch that Harrison Ford movie, because you're not gonna get that from your textbooks, the news media, mainstream, corporate, anything, because they're all going full Nazi now. Seems like. Okay, that's the end. What's up, Victor? Anyways, if you'd like to support us, don't forget everything we do is supported by the sales of Neofeud, which is you can find on Steam. It is as I said, a cyberpunk adventure game about the inequality, social inequality, racism, classism, in a cyberpunk satirical wrapper. I'm currently working on the sequel, nearly done with it. If you'd like to support that, wishlist the game, grab it. If you don't like Nazism and if you like games that are not quote unquote apolitical, which is not possible to do in my opinion, but if you like games that actually are relevant to the time in which they are written and on the right side of history, like Wolfenstein, then this is a game for you. Also, you can get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux on itch.io, and you can also get you want even more political game, you can just straight up fight the colonial capitalists and kick their ass. You want to fight a right-wing genocidal white supremacists and kill them, like a lot of them, in a war and win historically, and also defeat colonialism and capitalism. Well, you can do that in Decolonators, which is a historical game that actually tells the truth about the history. So you can play that game. Also, there's of course Indigenous Star, and there's Pigeon with Gun, where you play a pigeon with a gun, and this woman, which is about being raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, which has a lot of white nationalist and white supremacist elements within it, obviously, and but this is a book that is about being raised there, and the story of Mary's story, the mother of God, the mother of the Christian God, from her perspective, and it is a book that is free. You can throw some money our way when you pick that up. You can also get, oh shit, I didn't even post that. You can also get you can also follow at Silverspoon Games at Octagon.social and at Silverspoon Games at Mastodon.social. And you can also follow Silverspoon Guy on Twitter and Silverspoon Games for the games related stuff. This, of course, also the Facebook, Instagram. And speaking of other games, you can follow Terminus C, which is a cyberpunk RPG I'm the content director and the lead writer of. And so that's a game that you can follow over there on the Twitter. And also, you can follow Holly. Holly at the Tech Fairy is a Silverspoon wife and partner. The Silverspoon wife and partner and producer and manager with Kate Nix, the Twitch stream music and variety show. Next episode is next Tuesday. Parent caregiver here to two Hawaiian keiki writer and educator, and also somebody who wears masks, which is a good thing to do. I had a video about that last time in case you want to learn more about that. Don't forget to check out the other Silverspoon videos, like the one that deals with 12 monkeys and Cassandra life amongst pathology. Did I not change out the video? No, I did. Okay, thank God. So yeah, don't forget you can check out the other videos that we have like that. But anyways, you can also read more about important topics from Holly's social media as well. So don't forget to do that. And thank you very much to all the Patreon patrons who like your support. We don't have the ability to keep on doing this work. So if you appreciate the streams, if you get anything from it, I think we got a new Patreon member. But yeah, if you appreciate the streams, consider supporting us at any level. It really does help us a lot. We are going to be we're probably going to lose some patrons this end of this month. So if anybody can pitch in $1, $3, $5, any amount of dollars a month, if you find the streams of any value, it really does help because, we really need everything we can to keep the lights on. But just keeping the bare minimum of the bills paid. That's basically, we're not making money. There's no profit of any kind. But thanks a lot to Pen Name for your support. I'm just gonna add your name on this list. Oh shit! Thanks a lot to Pen Name for adding yourself to the list of our supporters. And I think I'll have to. I might run out of space on this. Anyways. Thanks so much, and everybody else who has become a Patreon member, it is massively appreciated. And we will see you later. I'm coming back on Twitch in the evening time around 5 Pacific time, or between 5 and 6. And until next time, keep punching them Nazis, and in a video game. I mean, don't go punching and shooting people in general. That's not what I'm saying. But Nazism is not a good thing. Should be obvious, but we live in a weird consensus reality manufactured nonsense hole. So have a good time, and we'll see you back in the future on the Twitch.